and welcome back to my channel. I am the Spell Singer, and this is my ongoing review of the Fighting Fantasy Gamebook series. And this review is going to give you a quick look at this title with its book number, and then a quick read of the blurb, check out the plot, look at the game mechanics and that adventure sheet. I'll run the artwork through this video as always, and then chat a little bit about my own likes and my own dislikes. Any fun facts, any errors worth mentioning, and a summary and a score for this book. So, this is Skylord, and this is book 33. This was published in 1988, so I would have been 11, and it was by Martin Allen. So he's not someone we've had so far in this series, Martin Allen, but the cover art there is Les Edwards. So good old Les is back doing the cover art. Quite a striking cover, this one. Looks like something out of Phantom Menace. Not sure if that's a good thing or not. And the internal artwork, all the illustrations are by Tim Sell. So remember Tim Sell from Steve Jackson's House of Hell? Well, same fella, he's back, and it just goes to show, his ability, because obviously a completely different genre. He did the artwork and House of Hell, which is obviously horror, and now we've got this high sci-fi kind of adventure story, which he does the artwork for as well. And again, just very good artwork from Mr. Sell. So good for him. Okay, so let me read the blurb from my copy. So this says, pay attention. Elbastin, genius, geneticist, geneticist, and renegade, steward of Vaax, king of the planet Ensulina, is poised to conquer the cosmos with an army of terrifying clones, dog-headed Prefectas, the perfect warriors. Only a solo mission can penetrate the defences of Elbastin's fortress, planet Aarok. Only the best solo trooper can undertake such a mission. That agent is you, if you dare. Yeah, okay. So that's the blurb. Let's chat about the plot for Skylord. Now, in this adventure, you take the role of Young Mistral. So you have a name in this one, so it's quite unique. Yeah, that's something different already. You're a four-armed kind of soldier from planet Ensulina, and your mission is to travel to Aarok, which is an artificial planet that has become like the den of rogues and criminals alike. And you've got to capture a scientist named Elbastin. And the mission is doubly urgent because Elbastin has reportedly created this species of these dog-headed kind of humanoids that I mentioned in that blurb. They're called the Prefectas. They're the ultimate warrior that have been created, the ultimate warrior in the universe. So you are this space warrior. Yeah, you're Young Mistral, I think is how you pronounce it, and you're sent on this kind of assassination mission to kill this space fugitive, Elbastin, and he's jumped planet basically after arranging to have a colleague fired. And it's all explained in this convoluted background. He gets his colleague fired, and he's replacing them with these exact clones that he's developing, and then embezzling their wages. So Elbastin now hides on this planet, and he's built and he defends himself with all these troops called these Prefectas, these half-dog creatures known as Yappies. The opening intro is, like I say, very long, it's very thorough, very weird. The background does sort of motivate you in a way to go on your mission and crack on with it. It's quite well written, very descriptive. And the pilot concept makes quite a bit of sense as well, but the deranged way that everything kind of unfolds from that point on in front of you as you read is yeah, I think that the background on this is probably one of the stronger points, and then after that it starts to unravel, shall we say. But anyway, I don't want to I don't want to badmouth this book too much. It isn't a big fan favourite. In fact, I think it's probably considered the worst of the Puffin range. Do I think it's the worst? Yes, I do. I didn't for a while. Star Strider was my worst by Luke Sharp, but this one takes the mantle. Anyway, let's chat about the game mechanics and the adventure sheet. So, Skylord, it features the a stat of rating to determine your player's skill in piloting combat. So when I put the adventure sheet up, you'll see rating on there as like a box to complete. And like I said, that's your piloting combat. So like how well you can drive vehicles and such. And it's a 1d6 roll where a 1, 2 or 3 means a rating of 3. And a roll of 4, 5, 6 is a rating of 4. So obviously the higher, the better as usual. The rating score is used to determine who fires first, in said combats. So if the player, or if you defeat an enemy whose rating was higher than yours, or higher than your own, then you can add 1 point to your rating score at the end of that battle. So you can sort of see, like the harder the battles, if you are successful, then you can progress up and your own ship and its abilities will become that much more. This book uses provisions, tablets, they're called, and they restore 4 stamina, so no change there. So instead of regular provisions, it's tablets. Now the main mechanic is this combat system with the 2 different styles of combat offered. So you've got standard, which is like the traditional fighting fantasy way of rolling. It's quite easy with most opponents being relatively weak in your sort of hand-to-hand combat. The special edition is small craft combat. It's a whole new mechanic that's been designed by Martin Allen for this book, especially. It's, as mentioned, you have this kind of rating score, which is your combat prowess, if you like. And you basically roll 1 to 6 in combat, and whoever has the highest higher rating automatically attacks first, so that kind of makes sense. And this does add a sense of realism when faced with sort of experienced opponents, and your rating goes up by that 1 point, like I mentioned, every time you win against someone stronger than you or a higher rating than you. So that's quite good. It's once you get started in this book, you can sort of progress quite quickly through the narrative and through the battles as well. Now, sadly, this fails by the fact that many opponents have a higher rating than you, putting you at an immediate disadvantage. Added to this is the lasers stat, which I'll show you in a moment, where you roll 1 dice and you need to roll under your lasers. So your ship, you'll see in a minute in the adventure sheet, has a certain number of lasers. I think it's 4 lasers. You roll and you need to roll under your lasers, which are between 1 and 6 again. This is fine until you encounter either of the 2 foes with lasers of 5, so or the one with laser score of 6 who cannot ever miss. So you can sort of see how this mechanic falls slightly. The small craft combat is so weighted against you that you are unlikely to really survive more than 1 or 2 attacks. Quite convoluted. There is a third combat system as well. Against big ships, so like the big star cruisers, which involves a series of meaningless choices, not so much dice rolling, more sort of decisions, where you are highly likely to either collide or die. I'll give you an example of that a bit later. So lots of new mechanics, not all brilliantly explained by the book or by me because it is that convoluted. There are 2 additional games that are sort of more guesswork rather than, or maybe more luck rather than any kind of challenge. They involve sort of looking at printed. I'll put the grid up here. Actually, you can see it here. So this is what it looks like. You've got this in the inside cover. So you've got to look at this grid So yeah, on the front cover. But these don't really aid you much. These, if you didn't have these grids for this kind of sort of a sub-game, both of the sub-games, you wouldn't really miss out too much. They don't really help you much, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, it's just one of these quirky new games that's been added that maybe seemed like a good idea at the time, but in practice it's not quite so good. The first game can be found on page 200. Actually, I'll read it to you. It's so much easier if I read it to you, because obviously trying to explain these blinking rules. So this is what it says, reference 200. Quick and careful, this way, yells Dr. Strange Thing. As you follow him through the corridors into another room, the doctor points ahead. There is a way out, he says gleefully. You see a glass tehedron on the other side of the room. But observe the tiles on the floor in front of us, orange, green and blue, circle and squares. Refer to diagram 1. You must be careful, there is only one way across. The tiles change colour as you step on them. Step on the wrong colour and you'll be obliterated. However, the tattered vellum parchment you have recently picked up may provide you with a clue. You step on an orange square, tile C1, and all the square-shaped tiles change colour. Orange to blue, blue to green, green to orange. The circles, however, do not change colour. And you've got to note this. Otherwise, you're never going to remember. And then you get a series of references to move to, depending on what colour or shape you want to walk on. Yeah, it's all right. It's a bit like those sub-games in Space Assassin. Probably looked good in the mind, but when you put them on paper, they don't work quite as well. The second game, this kind of circular platform with the creatures. I'll read this one out as well. This one makes a little bit more sense, but it's still equally tough to play. So it says here, Glip now turns the red ring one segment anti-clockwise, but his path is blocked by a screen. Scuttlebug rotates the blue ring one segment clockwise, and he too is foiled. Finally, Mutant turns the yellow ring one segment anti-clockwise, but his phase ends. The third move begins. Will you rotate the red ring one segment clockwise or two segments anti-clockwise? So basically, you're in the middle of this kind of I think you're right in the centre of it. And you gotta kind of work your way out, and the black lines involve walls, and I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. There's also some alien language in this book that you've got to translate, which is quite clever. Nothing as complex as Steve Jackson's Creature of Havoc, but it's still fun. I'll put up a little example here so you can sort of see what that looks like. And I think it's on reference 161. Yeah, here it is. So as you step onto the plaque set in the floor, mysterious fiery letters arrive from it. And then, of course, you get this image here. And you've got to kind of make a note of it. You get told it translates into central vaults ahead. And of course, from that, you get to know what letters mean or relate to what symbols. And it will prove useful later on. I think there's another one, 253. So you'll have this information, which is useful, and then you get to this. You gather up your weapons and free Dr. Strange Thing. You're about to leave the cell when the doctor calls. One moment, I know the passage to the surface, but there are traps on the way. No one has ever escaped from these dungeons. Thinking for a moment, you search the body. In a concealed pouch, you find a tattered vellum parchment. And that's where you get this image here. And it becomes that much more easier to sort of to kind of work out what it reads, because of course you had that earlier clue. So that's quite nice, and it's straightforward and it works, which is a good thing. So there are plenty of new game mechanics in this book to sort of get involved in. Some used more than others, but they're all round roughly they're all used roughly the same amount throughout the book, and they're all quite solid, apart from maybe that weird circular one. But it's good to come up with something new. But that works nicely with the adventure sheet, which is definitely something new. So you've got your skill, stamina, and luck as always, but then of course you've got your rating underneath that, like I mentioned earlier. Your credits, you start with 10 credits. Never found a time to spend any money or retrieve any money, so I don't know what that's for. Oxygen supply. There is a place in the book where you go and you can run out of oxygen. I never found it in any gameplay or attempt at completing this. When I finally did finish it, I put the book down and vowed never to read it again. And I haven't read it since, but if I ever do find it in a future review, I'll mention where that oxygen thing is, because I couldn't tell you where it is. You got your notes and your items underneath there, and then you turn the page over and you get this, which is kind of like, remember how when you first read Freeway Fighter and you got your car, your interceptor, you could roll up, and when you first read Starship Traveller and you got your ship, you could roll up, and your pirate vessel in Seas of Blood. Well, same sort of thing here. Martin Allen has brought us this awesome ship, and it's got your shields on the sides there and your lasers in the middle. And you start off with 4 high-powered lasers and these 12 shields, and it's called the Star Spray. So that's quite good. And this works actually quite well. There aren't many space combats, but those there are kind of work well with this book. So yeah, you've got this cool little addition to the adventure sheet to work through. There's also a slightly different combat sheet for your vehicles. You've got your vehicles at the top there where you record the rating, the lasers and their shields. And then you've got alien combats underneath, which are like the good old battles from Fighting Fantasy previous books. Again, with rating, lasers and shields. So yeah, there's all that going on. So there's lots lots to do in this adventure sheet, and it's one of the highlights of this book, I would say. Right, that leads on to the artwork. So good old Tim Sell is back. His artwork here is probably the book's strongest feature, I could say. Remember House of Hell, how amazingly captive that artwork was? Well, he does his best for this sci-fi book as well. Some of the illustrations are sort of from a third-party perspective, where you can sort of see your ship in the distance, or taking off or crashing or whatever. Other times it appears to be your perspective. So I quite like the way it changes between the two. It gives it a little bit of variety throughout the book. It also find that Skylord is kind of crammed with all these weird, zany illustrations of creatures and mad scientists, bizarre alien landscapes, and all these kind of magical worlds that he's thought up and tried to describe using the author's descriptive writing. The bright yellow front cover is suitably, it's quite garish, but it does stand out and you do remember it. Even if it does remind you of the Phantom Menace. So yeah, you've got that as well. It's quite appealing to me. It's very different from all the other sort of dark, menacing fighting fantasy covers. So yeah, it does stand out. And as always, I've got a favourite picture, this bizarre horse's head here. Let me read you could almost take this picture and stick it in House of Hell and it wouldn't look out of place. So you've got this weird, drooling horse's head. It says here, passing a large tablet printed with incomprehensible letters of red and yellow, you enter what you believe to be a small shrine. Within, on a low brass pedestal, is an obsidian sculpture, 6 feet high, fashioned like a raindrop. The front of the shrine is open to view from the causeway, and so, as your lantern-bearing figure approaches, you leap behind the sculpture, pressing yourself against it. This action is disastrous. As you touch the stone, it liquefies and splashes to the floor like cold water. In its place, standing upon the pedestal, is a hideous ruby-coloured creature with a horse-like head, 2 legs and no arms. It's wrapped in light grey pyjamas, embellished with darker grey arrows. Upon its head is a floppy peaked cap of similar material. Leering at you, it rants, free after 400 years, such harsh treatment for a few petty killings and some harmless debauchery. They'll rue the day they locked fearless Fog Farkin away. You recall the name, a tyrannical galactic gangster of yesteryear, sentenced to 1,000 years imprisoned for countless robberies and brutal slayings, and you have released him. It's a good picture. Not sure about all the gumph that went with it, but it is a good illustration. Well done, Tim. My own likes and dislikes for this book. I quite like all the weird names that go with this random adventure. Characters and encounters like Captain Big Ears, Fogfarkin, who we just heard from, Ruthless Rod, and Ludo Kludvig. And you get all these weird encounters as well, like Crafty Corporal, Snappy Sergeant, Clumsy Mutant, Big Hulk, Even Bigger Hulk, Foppish Dignitary, and Gobblepotamus. And I like the nature of this adventure in general. It is a lot of fun, and I think that's where people slipped up. You can't compare this one to the other Titan-based fantasies. It bears no resemblance. You just have to have an open mind and just treat it as a bit of fun, because that's all it really is. It's so convoluted and disjointed, and you can't map it. I mean, I did map it. Check out this. Look at the state of that map. Anyway. Yeah, so there are things I do like about it. The book is crammed with all these zany illustrations from Tim, creatures, mad scientists, aliens, bizarre landscapes, magical worlds, like I said, and the bright yellow cover is a beautiful thing. I really like that. It's one of my top likes, that bright yellow cover. But as much as all that is good about it, it is a big old space jolly at the end of the day. And even though it's not hugely liked, it does have some redeeming features. I'm not so keen, however, on all the short references and all the instant deaths, of which there are many. Let me give you an example of some short references. Don't worry, it won't take long. 65, okay, reference 65. Here we go. Reference 65. The old man squeals angrily. Turn to 384. 141. I just picked these out at random. Here we go. 141. This manoeuvre showed real flair. Turn to 206. 185. Last one. Reference 185. Turn to 348. Now, when you've got a book of 400 references, you can't afford to throw them away, because you're just wasting description and storytelling, surely. So it always bugs me a little bit. And the instant deaths are just as bad. Let's give you 3 of those as well. Here we go, 59. Reference 59. Wrong, replies Brick and blasts you to atoms. That's it. What do we got? 248. You are blown to pieces by a huge nuclear mine. 297. Last one. The blob soon catches and devours you. Now, also, this disjointed feel you get when reading through Skylord. Many paragraphs don't really follow on very well in a kind of coherent fashion that you have come to expect, which can kind of break the immersion slightly, if you had any immersion. Otherwise, yeah, that's it for my likes and dislikes. Fun facts. Now, the inside cover featured those 2 diagrams that we checked out earlier for use, during the course of the book, and the artist of which is currently unknown. It's not Leo Hartis, I hear you say. But yeah, there's no record of him. So, put it in the comments if you know who did it. I haven't got a clue. Some of the later reprintings of Skylord saw the diagrams go missing completely. Like I mentioned earlier, oddly, readers found that this did not really pose any kind of significant impediment because of the kind of description is enough anyway. So you don't really need those images, but I think it's just there to sort of, give it a bit of colour. But yeah, Skylord is the last to date game book in this series to use a science fiction setting. So after this book, that's it. No more sci-fi, people. Errors. Not many. In fact, the illustrations on page 86 depicts you with 4 arms, like it said you had it in the background. It said you had 4 arms. But this does not take into account the possibility of replacing one arm with a tentacle. And now, their explanation of that, page 86. So if I go to page 86, there it is. So there you are with 4 arms. I think that's you. And then on reference 304, it explains, suddenly the robot's arms are activated. One of these grips your hand and shakes it so vigorously that your arm is torn off. So you lose a bit of stamina. And and an arm, I don't know. Is it an error? It's continuity, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, let's just summarise this book, shall we? So, it's a great thing about the Skylord is the introductory pages. They're quite full. They tell you about your background, your assassin, and you need to take down this villain El Bastin, who's amassed an army of dog-headed clones, to conquer the universe. And it's all good and exciting until you start the campaign, until it actually begins. And you're asked to make lots of very random choices, which don't really make an awful lot of sense. There are no real explanations or descriptions that will kind of help you make these choices, so you just have to pick one. It's just a case of picking a choice. This is the entire campaign. This is the whole story. It's all like this. Lots of random choices, random outcomes, random deaths, and lots of joyless work for very little payoff. There are some extra combat modes involving like spaceships where you become better. Like I say, the more you fight these stronger ships, the better you get. But this campaign is quite unfair in the sense that every other enemy that you face will be far stronger than you. Strangely, the more traditional one-on-one combat, that we're used to, is fairly easy. So yeah, it balances out. Still, there's some mild amusement to be had in how surreal and bizarre the world is. The NPCs and enemies that you meet have these kind of absurd names, and the narrative becomes increasingly bizarre as you progress. Characters will say things that seem deliberately designed to be zany. Skylord is kind of like, it's pretty bizarre anyway, and it's a fascinating book. It can be a little bit boring and tedious at times. A great failing of this book is that it is astonishingly inane. I can't say it any nicer than that. After a few paragraphs, basically, you find yourself becoming sort of quite frustrated, to be honest, at its lack of obvious purpose. You don't really know what you're doing. You don't really know where you're going. If this book was ever intended to be taken seriously, then Martin Allen, he slipped up a little bit there, because I'm fairly sure it's intended to just be a bit of a jolly. But to give you an idea of the randomness, Skylord swings from seemingly impossible problems that there should be no way out of. Crash land on, if you crash your ship on a planet, surely that's it. And you suddenly survive, and through random situations, there seems to be going, quite well, and then suddenly you get an instant death thrown in. So you think, I crashed my ship, and you make a few choices, and then there's a sudden death. It doesn't seem to have any sort of coherence. So for example, if you crash your ship by hitting the surface of a planet, you survive the incident, you brush yourself down, and you basically crash, you've crashed your ship and it's all vaporized, it's all smashed up. You might think, it's the ship, it's out, it's bad news, it's over. But you get a run-in with someone who can reverse time, and he soon sorts out your problem. Like it was nothing. And this can be all well and good, but this is just like the first of a catalogue of these crazy situations that the book presents you. So it's like the author, he made a decision to smash his ship up, and they think, hold on a minute, what am I going to do now? I'll put someone in here, I'll shoehorn this guy in who can get the flux capacitor working in reverse time. I don't know. So to give an idea of the most zany moment of this book, you can meet a character called Waterwick. So obviously it's actually Roderick, but the NPC can't pronounce the name properly, so he's called Waterwick. The space dog fight with a baffling series of choices involving pitch and yaw of your ship, That's another one. That's so random. Nothing more than pure guesswork. I don't know what your means even. So how I was supposed to do that, I don't know. I think I worked it out in the end by just guessing it, which is a lot of this book, a lot of guesswork. But yeah, more often than not, you just end up getting killed anyway. You can visit this space station in the first act. It's infested with all these orange blobs that are causing mayhem. And they chase you around a bit, and it leads through these arbitrary series of choices that aren't really choices, as you have no idea what it is you're trying to do. And then finally, the end, you see, you sort of arrive on this world with all these different domes. So you've done the space bit, you land on this planet, there's all these kind of weird domes that are so random that they have no association to each other. And there's this bit in the spaceship where these orange blobs are. You go through all these different rooms, and each room is it's like a gymnasium or a kitchen or a break room. And in each room, you can pick up all this random stuff. It's like an Ian Livingstone shopping list. And say, there's 12 items here. You're in a gym. There's a dumbbell. There's a skipping rope and a steroid needle. And you can take 3 of them. And you think, okay. And then you go into another room. There's a kitchen. There's a knife and a cucumber. And you go through all these rooms, and then you've got all this stuff, and you think, I'm sure it'll come in handy later. And then you get to the end of the spaceship, and you can escape it, and there's a big blob, and he's got a big mouth, and all the items are to chuck in his mouth. And each item has a rating of how deadly it is, either 1 to 3. So a banana might be 1, but a steroid syringe might be 3. So you lob all this stuff in his mouth, and if you can cause enough damage by points, he dies. If you can't, you die, and then you leave. And the whole thing was pointless. That you don't pick up anything there, you don't gain anything, you don't learn anything. It's like the biggest filler since that planetoid on Space Assassin. I'm exhausted. So sci-fi fighting fantasy books are often very linear. And this is the case with Skylord. If you want that true path, gotta be strict. And the true path will take several attempts to find. But there is a linear, it is very linear. It avoids, the linear path avoids a lot of these sections that are pointless, you don't need to go to. And given the tough nature of this ship-based combat that they throw at you every so often, it's likely that you will find yourself sort of cheating as you wish to progress and avoid these harder paths, This will not hugely, take away much of the book because it's such a struggle. It's hard work. It's not hugely light. It's easily forgettable, I'm afraid. You can't take this one too seriously. It can be fun, but only if you have an open mind and take lots of drugs. It doesn't really have any association with the rest of the series. And for all those reasons, I would have to give it a 4 out of 10 for Skylord. When you read it, if you haven't read it before, open mind. It's just a bit of fun. 4 out of 10. This is probably the longest review because there's so much to talk about this book, but not in a good way. I'm sorry if you're a fan, but I'm not really much of a fan. But anyway, that was Skylord. That's the review. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, give us a comment, share it, blah, blah, blah. And the next book we'll do is book 34, and it's Soul Stealer. Or is it Stealer of Souls? Is it Stealer of Souls? It's by Keith Martin anyway, aka Carl Sargent, who we've not had yet. Yeah, Stealer of Souls. So we'll do that one next. So I'll catch you in the next review.